I'm going to piss off an entire community. BookTok. I'm not the first person to talk about this, and I won't be the last person to talk about this. But, I think this was kind of like incited by the shitstorm that I got on BookTok the other day. And so I think I just kind of like reflected on BookTok, and now I'm going to try and articulate what has been bothering me about the reading sphere and my problem with BookTok for a very long time now. I hope that everything I want to say is going to be here so that I can say it now and be done with it. Hi all, welcome back to my channel. I still have not gotten a proper mic. A little introduction, I guess. I have been a reader since 2016, and I primarily read romance fantasy, which has kind of like evolved into Romantasy, which I don't really like. I guess that kind of already should state the beginning of my problem. Fantasy romance has become Romantasy and muddled what the genre used to be like. And I'm not the first person to complain about this, but I'm here now, so I will be complaining about this. And I want you to keep in mind that I'm going to talk about all of these issues through this kind of like fantasy romance or Romantasy lens. So just before I go and delve into everything that I kind of hate about BookTok and everything that I think is wrong with BookTok, I'm going to piss off an entire community. I need to state what my problem with Romantasy is, because as I said, I liked fantasy romance a lot. It's one of my favorite genres. I love it so much, but I think my problem with Romantasy lays the foundation with what my problem is with BookTok and everything. The market is oversaturated. Why? Because anyone can publish these days, including me, which means that everyone can publish a quart of this and that. People who just want to cash in or underdeveloped writers will write a copy of what is already out there and it will sell despite the story being underbaked or unoriginal, because it fills this void of what people think they want. In K-pop terms, it's kind of like Blackpink. They release a song like every 2 to 3 or 5 years, and they release such little music in general as a group that the fans will eat up anything that the group puts out there, no matter how bad the song might be, just to fill the void and the craving that they have because they are just a fan of the group. Also, I kind of want to say, people like to throw in A Court of Thorns and Roses when it comes to like bad or overrated books, but they keep forgetting that that is the blueprint. Every other like romantasy book that they love out there with their shadow daddies, with their morally gray dark-haired villains, is because of A Court of Thorns and Roses. They don't realize that Sarah J. Maas set the standard way back in the day. Like, it's her fucking fault we're in this mess. I'm not, by the way, like promoting her or like her books or whatever in a way. I will keep using a couple of books while I'll talk about this over and over again just to like make my point clear. But anyway, she laid the foundation for like all of the books that have flooded the book sphere now, and everyone wants a piece of that success cake, which is why so many people publish essentially the same book just in different fonts. But why do all of these books get so popular if all the Romantasy books read the same these days despite the noticeable dip in quality? Here is where my problem with BookTok comes into play. And we need to start off with new readers. I have have about a decade of experience to compare review spaces. Back then, a BookTube was like the place to be. Now we have BookTok. A lot of people like me have started on Wattpad, not even AO3. We have started our reading experiences on Wattpad. I read really bad fanfics written by and for teenagers, sometimes riddled with mistakes and really rough writing, but it was anything I could get my hands on to get that Harry Styles fix. We've eaten garbage, and we started to learn what finer cuisine is, right? You can only distinguish green plastic from jade if you know both. You can only know what's good if you know what's bad. And the problem is that people have flooded reading spaces that don't engage critically with media, that are now just reading published books that we read on Wattpad in like 2010. And of course, you will love books like Fourth Wing if it's your first fantasy book and you don't have much else to compare it to. I want to say, there is time for all of us to grow. You start somewhere, you start building like a repertoire of like standards, and you start like recognizing, oh, this book that I read back in the day, I thought it was great. Now I'm older. I've had more reading experience. I've consumed more books. I can recognize now that the book that I thought I loved wasn't actually good. And that is fine. The growth period, that is okay. That is fine. We all go through it, right? You can't like start in the beginning and be perfect. It's okay to not always engage critically with the things that you read, especially if you just start to learn what that actually means. But you gotta do it sometimes. Like, you can't rate every book 5 stars, and you can't say that you won't rate a book nothing below 3 stars ever. And as an author, you can't say that reviewers can't leave negative or like 1-star reviews just because you don't want that or you don't like that. There are people out there that only read the dialogue and skim over paragraphs or descriptive paragraphs. Do you even like reading? The one girl comes to mind that was like, oh, Six of Crows has way too many words. Do you even like reading? What is it that you do when you say something like that? What do you actually do when you hold that book in your hand and you stare at the page? All of these people, they flock to BookTok to talk about the books that they love, and that is where it gets really tricky. Review spaces. There is no nuance anymore when promoting books on BookTok. And I'm saying promote because the majority of BookTok isn't even properly about like reviewing books anymore. They hold up a beautiful cover or they post a quote or a trope and simply say that they like love the book and it's the best book ever and that you need to read it. So there's seldomly space for actual reviews. People, and I'm saying that like as a broad term, of course, like not everybody, but like people don't differentiate anymore when it comes to loving a book's vibe. They don't really realize that you can love something and still be able to criticize something. And I keep saying that with K-pop too. That is okay to hold something dear and to care for something and to like something or love something. And on the other hand, still objectively be able to criticize that thing. You can love a vibe of a book despite plot holes or bad world building, but you should disclose that when you say you love a book. That's how Fourth Wing became so immensely popular. I have to say, I'm a very critical reader and I would like to know how I manage my expectations when going into a book. And so when people raved about Fourth Wing and they were like, I love it so much, it was the best book ever, it's so great, and no one disclosed that they loved the vibe or just the romance aspect of it. I went into this book thinking this is going to be a great book, and then I found myself with terrible world building, plot holes, inconsistent characters, romance that actually wasn't even that good in my opinion. As I said, I'm a critical reader, but all of these things I was not prepared for because everyone was like, this is a 5-star read, it's the most perfect book ever. And I think people need to kind of like learn that enjoying a book doesn't mean the book is good. There is such a thing as objectivity, and a book is made up of more than just a vibe or more than just a plot. Characters, dialogue, writing, world building, etc. Like all of these things, they all fall into that category and can objectively be praised or criticized. Fourth Wing, for example, on almost all accounts is objectively bad, but you can still enjoy it. It's kind of like trash TV, you know what I mean? Like objectively, it's bad, but you can still sit down and enjoy it. You can say, was it good? No. But did I have a good time? Yeah, absolutely. I had fun reading it. But no one discloses that thing anymore. And here we come to two words that BookTok just seems to hate. Critical thinking. BookTok will read almost anything. I do have to say, when it comes to like problematic authors, well, no, okay, no, cancel that. I was gonna say like, oh, they stand on business when it comes to like problematic or racist authors, but that's not the case. Anyway, BookTok will read almost anything and they're going to be okay with it. As I said, Fourth Wing got really popular just because of BookTok. Remember when they pushed Colleen Hoover so fucking hard? And they will read a blatant ripoff of Red Queen and promote it as the best book ever. And here is where the phrase comes into play that just boils me from the inside sometimes. Turning my brain off. That kind of thinking just rots you from the inside. I'm so sorry. Do you watch movies with your eyes closed? Do you listen to music on mute? We need to engage critically with media because we owe it to ourselves not to become stupid. And media in any shape or form should be handled critically. Education is being lost whenever you say you turn your brain off to read. What was that one dystopian book? Silver Elite is a dystopian book. It wants you to read it critically. That is inherent to the genre of dystopian. Imagine reading The Hunger Games with your brain off. Literacy and critically handling media is so important. Education is so important. And while it's not that deep, it's sometimes fine to say it's circumstantial and contextual. Like, I don't expect you to be overly critical when reading your monster fucker book, right? But I do expect you to read books critically sometimes, most of the times, not every book, but you can't turn your brain off for every book to be able to enjoy reading it, which that sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? You turn your brain off to enjoy reading something. Oh yeah, I love the new Sabrina Carpenter song. It played through my headphones and it was on the table, but I loved it. I'm so obsessed with it. Like, oh yeah, I love this new chocolate. I don't put it in my mouth, but I love it. It's so good. Do you Do you hear yourself? People need to realize that critically doesn't mean bad. It doesn't mean that when you engage with media or a book critically that you're just waiting to jump at the chance to hate it. It just means that you have a set of certain standards and that you can still objectively look at this book and be able to critique it and criticize it. It kind of like goes hand in hand with people who say sometimes the curtains are just blue. No. Hey, remember when I said people kind of like skim paragraphs and whatever? Those are the same people who are like, what do you mean his eyes darkened? Those are the same people that don't understand a character's anger unless it says they are angry. That is what is destroying the art of writing. That is what is producing so many bad books. As an author, now I also have a different perspective on this because you don't just throw, or you should. If you take your work serious, if you don't just throw words on a paper, but instead take time to create something really meaningful to you, then the curtains are not just blue. They're not turquoise, not lapis. It's actually cerulean. Just kidding. But a lot of thought usually goes into the smallest details in books like that. And actually, the scene from The Devil Wears Prada also kind of applies to my theory, you know?
Oh, okay. I see. You think this has nothing to do with you.
You think you not engaging critically with books has nothing to do with you?
You go to your
bookshelf and just select that fairy book, for instance. Because you're trying to tell the
world
that you turn your brain off when you read. But what you don't know is that that book is not just any book. You're also blithely aware of the fact that in 2012, Sarah J. Maas released Throne of Glass. And then I think she released The Court of Thorns and Roses, wasn't it? In 2015? I think we need Jack here. And then fairy books quickly showed up in the populations of 8 different authors. Then it filtered down through indie publishers and then trickled down into some tragic corner where you, no doubt, fished it out of some Amazon book sale. However, that fairy book represents millions of dollars and countless jobs. And it's sort of comical that you think you've made a choice that exempts you from the book industry when, in fact, you're reading a book that was published a decade ago and has influenced so many other authors, only for you to turn your brain off. Does that make sense? In my head, that kind of makes sense. What I'm trying to say is that your actions as a reader have consequences. You are not exempt from the book sphere and the publishing world just because you read without critically engaging with the source material because it's not that deep or the curtains are just blue. Anyway, another kind of point that I want to make is, when did BookTok become political? Especially if you're a fantasy reader or a romantasy reader, I guess, there will always be a power struggle thematized in those books. It's a them versus them. There's a war to fight, a battle to win. There is always some sort of conflict. In mafia romance, they may touch on misogyny. In romance books, they may deal with abuse or racism. Dystopian books inherently are political because of the genre itself. You find politics integrated in plots everywhere. And outside of the stories that you read, there was a time when it was illegal for women to read, for people of color to read. There was an anti-literacy law in the US and the South where enslaved black people were forbidden. It was illegal for them to learn how to read and write. Why do you think Nazis burned so many books in World War II? Why do you think Trump is banning so many books right now? Because books are education. Books teach you to think. Books mean intellect, and intellect means power. This is why you can't simply brush aside conversation about the complexity of engaging critically with books, or saying, oh, BookTok is political. Since when is BookTok political? Reading has always been political. Art is always political. Another thing that kind of just grinds my gears and ruffles my feathers a little bit is the publishing industry, which also contributes to the overall, like, just vicious cycle that we're going through with BookTok and publishing and the quality of the books that we're reading these days. And I'm going to start with traditional publishing. If trad publishing takes indie authors that have found success by themselves on BookTok to publish them and like back them with resources and everything, that is so amazing. As long as they're thinking this through, right? It all comes down to capitalism, of course. What sells is already out there in the market. And so they sign yet another Shadow Daddy author because they know that it sells, right? Because it does. Look at the market. It feeds into the cycle of oversaturating the already oversaturated market. Indie publishers keep pumping out these books, and then publishers pick out some of these indie authors and publish them. The quality of the books gets lower while the quantity is getting way too high. And now, I'm going to tell you the story of how I made men on TikTok really mad and I got into really hot waters with them. Let me tell you the story of Luke Bateman. If you weren't aware, Luke Bateman is an Australian dude who was on The Bachelor, and I think he was a rugby player. He joined BookTok, I think in April, so like 2 months ago, whatever. And then Traditional Publishing House in Australia picked him up and gave him a book deal. But he didn't even have a manuscript ready. He was kind of sort of famous on BookTok, and then they were like, yeah, you get a book deal. Apparently he got famous because he held up some popular books and he was like, BookTok told me to read Haunting Adeline. And people thirsted after him because he's a man, which is also kind of a critique on BookTok on my part. And it's not something that has never been said before, but this is very brain off behavior. Just like when they storm the section of Biker Talk and they're like, BookTok has been summoned. It's embarrassing to publicly market yourself as a pawn of the patriarchy like that. I am always so critical and so careful when I see a man in women-dominated spaces, because I always have to assume first that they're doing it for the fame, that they're not genuine, that they take advantage of the people that support them, and they just take advantage of the space to uplift and elevate themselves. Like Luke Bateman. Why did you make him famous? He's just a white man. Anyway, that got him a book deal. I wasn't aware of him before, but apparently people have been complaining that he didn't seem genuine, that he did it for the fame to like appease the female crowd that he kind of like pulled in. Also, he made like a follow-up video or whatever. He did not seem reflective. He did not like apologize. He was like, anyone can read a book, just fucking do it. That is a topic for another day. I said something like, man, oh my god, the men came into my comment section. Oh my god, I opened TikTok, 120 new comments from men telling me I suck, telling me I'm bad, saying men are just better than women, blah, 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 whatever, I don't care. It was my first shitstorm. I made it out. But yeah, anyway, a part of, like, not the entirety of BookTok, but a part of BookTok creates this problem, immerses itself in it without recognizing that it's a problem, and then pushes that problem onto everyone else because their actions do not exist in a vacuum. Traditional publishing needs to set its sights on searching for fresh talents with new ideas and also promote their POC authors that they already signed. Like, you can't sign a person and then not push them. Anyway, different topic. Let's move on to indie publishing. I am just a cog in a machine. I recognize that. I have to break my book down into quotes or tropes to promote it, even though I never wrote the book with the intention of doing that. That is why it's so hard for me to do it, because I never sat down and was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna write a quote that's so good, everyone's gonna love it. And then I have to like craft a story around it. No. Many books feel like that. Many books feel like they've been written around tropes to cram as many in as possible to be able to promote it on TikTok later. And there are so many romance books that also feel like that, and they never read well, at least not to me. I feel like so many ideas, I mean, of course, like, books have been published since fucking the printing machine existed. But many ideas have been so overused, and a lot of books that come out, they are so surface level and just bland. Characters are created to fit a certain type, like the MMC who's all dark hair and morally gray, and then the female character who is just a poor excuse of a strong female lead and is stripped of any sort of depth. We have enemies to lovers in an office setting or a tennis court. Hello? What are you doing? We have morally gray, billionaire, stalker, bodyguard, mafia bosses. And I do think trope marketing has ruined an integral part of the book community. Which, side note, okay? It's so fucking annoying. Enemies to lovers is a fucking spoiler. When you promote a book as enemies to lovers, you spoil the entire fucking thing. You can never truly get invested in the story, and you never truly get the plot twist, because the plot twist is, oops, the villain gets the girl. Because you just know it's coming. A lot of people don't want to hear this, but that's what made A Court of Thorns and Roses work so well, because it was marketed as a Beauty and the Beast retelling. If it had been marketed by publishers and then promoted by readers as enemies to lovers, the gigantic plot twist in book 2 would have never hit the way it did if we never go through all of the emotions Feyre had with Temlin, and then spend an entire book with him, and then like book 2, and like go through all of the struggles in book 2. We would have been detached from Feyre and her emotions every single step of the way, because we would have just waited for Rhys to show up. We would have just waited for them to get together and seen Temlin as an obstacle. It's ruining the suspense, the plot twists, and connections to the characters. And the other love interest never really feels real. The other love interest just feels like a placeholder. And that is how the authors themselves oftentimes treat them. They know those characters are not here to stay, and so they don't even try. Editing me here. I also would like to add that in stories where it's supposed to be like enemies to lovers, but there's no like other love interest or anything, that it usually heavily relies on some sort of like insta love, insta lust, insta attraction. There is no tension. I feel like the enemies to lovers is rarely ever truly executed as enemies because it's not rivals, right? It's not people of inconvenience. It's enemies. Those people fucking hate each other. They want to kill each other. And it's very rarely ever executed well in a way where it feels authentic, because like they usually get over the hatred like in a page or two. Also, these days, I feel like, especially with books that kind of like blow up on BookTok and they're objectively bad, the authors are never really truly passionate about writing. That just might be my opinion. It just feels like they don't care for writing anything beyond a second draft. They don't care for immersive writing or consistent characters or complexity or anything that objectively makes a bad or a good book. It feels like they have no passion to create something from the ground up that they love, you know? And I feel like that reflects in the book. Everything feels so lackluster and uncreative these days. And my notes just say, cute, powerless. Also, I kind of want to say, how did we get to the point where people read a book with the main love interest who's called Kingfisher and they love it? Anyway, people rave about books like Powerless, for example. They promote it, they love it. Even Victoria Aveyard, the author of Red Queen, has kind of like said, yeah, it's a ripoff. And yet it was BookTok's newest romantasy hit and people loved it. Please tell me you see something wrong here. The publishing world is an unruly sea, and many indie authors like myself, we get swept up and lost in the current. And it seems that no matter how determined or passionate you are, if you don't adhere to the trends that are out there, you lose. I did write a fae book. Is it a quarter of this and that? No. Even though I took something that is out there already, I didn't model it after other books, you know? Because why would I want to write a book that already exists? What's the point of writing something that already exists a million times? It feels as though many have forgotten that writing can be an art form and that it just isn't a device to project yourself into a story to make money, and that it requires more than just a rough fever dream and maybe AI to help you write it. Books shouldn't be a cash grab for neither traditional publishers or indie authors. It's no coincidence that we have so many books that all look and read the same, that get pumped out at a rate that should be impossible even if you don't believe all of the points that I've just made previously. Books these days are just fast fashion. Everyone is doing the same thing at a rate that is destroying us. So how do we fix this? Honestly, who am I to say? Why do I have to solve a problem that I didn't even create in the first place? Anyway, let me give you pointers. I think honesty is the first step. In reviews, we should disclose what we liked and what we didn't like about the book. We should be a little bit more critical when reviewing or promoting books. We need to go beyond the I loved it. Ask yourself why you loved it, what you loved about it. People need to be honest and say they enjoyed a book when it was bad. We need nuanced conversations and spaces for actual reviews, which is like kind of happening on Goodreads, but still I feel like that is also kind of like getting muddled, you know what I mean? The first step is to engage with what you read critically, reflect what you loved or hated about a book, and then be honest. We need to engage with books more critically. When you read a monster fucker book, do you have to set expectations that reach Shakespearean level writing? No, but you need to set certain standards. You should engage critically with books in an objective manner, in an objective sense, and then be honest and transparent about all of your thoughts to other people. Publishing needs to fix itself and turn away from capitalism. That's not going to happen. It's great that people who have once been like the authors who publish themselves get the chance to be published by traditional publishing houses, but the quality of what is put out there should be reevaluated sometimes. If BookTok doesn't start engaging critically with books, we don't put a damper on the oversaturated market. We don't need 1,000 books that all read the same with bad quality writing and cardboard cutout characters. Once people realize that, once BookTok reevaluates the supply and demand, the publishing industry can change. Also, authors need to get a grip. We don't need 1 million of the same books. Invest time in passion projects and don't pump out like 10 books in 2 years just because of what's trendy right now. Learn and grow and write your own stuff. Don't plagiarize. Write what you love. Write what you want, not what a fickle market demands right now. Create what you can be proud of and what's not trendy right now. That being said, my book is out. You know, if you want to check it out, it's called When Dusk Settles. There's more infos about it on my socials, TikTok and Instagram. It's called Joanna's Book Space. Am I perfect?
Yes.
Am I the perfect writer? No. There's always room for growth. I've said that. I wrote and edited and published this book all by myself, and it's terribly hard, and we all know that it's really hard, and it took me years to finish this book, but it's something that I am very proud of. You know, I feel like I have to justify myself. I feel like I have to balance a thin line where it feels as though I can't be critical of books because I wrote a book myself, and that book is probably not like it is not the Poppy War, which is kind of stupid because reading and writing are two different things. I know I sound very harsh when I have very strong opinions, but I'm just, you know, I've come to the point where I don't even know if I like reading anymore. Like, I have to ask myself, hey, do I even like reading anymore? Because I've read so many bad books that were promoted on BookTok that just were really bad. Like, really bad. Like, so bad. Let me know what you think. Let's be kind to each other. And maybe leave a good review of your favorite book in the comments down below. I want to read it. Bye-bye.